Welcome to another episode of The Brand Called You, a podcast and podcast show that brings you leadership lessons, knowledge, experience, and wisdom from thousands of successful individuals from around the world. I'm your host, Ashutosh Garg, and today I'm delighted to welcome an accomplished professional and an author from Los Angeles, USA, Tamara Hill. Tamara, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me.
Tamara is a former interactive advertising executive and an author. She's the founder of Hill House Group, and her book, the author as an author, is The Threads of Becoming, a poetry memoir on resilience and transformation, which is releasing in October 2025. So, Tamara, before we come to your book and the Hill House Group, a few questions for you. You've had a
Sure.
25 plus year career across Silicon Valley, New York, Europe, and USA. What drew you into the world of creative strategy and design?
Yeah, well, I feel it was partly in the right place at the right time. When I graduated university was right when the internet started, and I got recruited to work for the first advertising agency that had an interactive division. So I'm dating myself here, but back in the day when websites were just a billboard on a computer. So I was lucky enough to be in meetings with Steve Jobs in my early 20s and be
Wow.
deeply embedded in that community. And then quickly, it went into e-commerce where I moved to New York and then back in it at user experience where I think what kept me there is designed to improve people's lives. So really
Mm,
through technology, being able to create great experiences for people,
amazing.
both in the business and personal lives.
Yeah, amazing. And from Airbnb to Bounteous, you've led
Yeah.
digital transformation initiatives globally. What were some of the leadership lessons you took from these roles?
I think I think really listening, all of my teams were incredibly talented, and I
Hmm.
think the ones where I felt we were particularly more successful is when people were curious, had the ability to collaborate, and really wanted to solve problems.
Hmm.
And Airbnb was the first time I went client side, um, just because it is a real personal interest. And I think they really, again, designed to improve people's lives and change the way a whole hospitality
Hmm.
services industry operates.
Amazing. And after such a global career, what inspired you to step back and take a sabbatical? And how did that shift your perspective on work and life?
Sure. I think like many of us, the pandemic, right? There
Yes.
was a lot of shifting. We're working from home, new perspectives of what do we want to do with ourselves and our
Mhm.
time. My children were reaching adulthood, so it was a good opportunity for me to think, okay, is this the way in which I still want to be living my life?
Mm.
So I always have my foot in the corporate world. I just can't help it. I'm so passionate about it.
Correct, correct.
But it was an opportunity to start my luxury property real estate and to
Mm.
really embrace my writing in that quiet time and help that be part of the journey of my discovery of what I do in the next phase of my life.
Fascinating. So let's now talk about your book first, and then we'll come to your
Sure.
business. You've got a book coming out in October, and maybe it's already released by now.
This
Which is
week, this week it was published.
oh, congratulations! That's
Thank you.
fantastic. That's fantastic. It's a book titled "The Threads of Becoming." Your book is described, Tamara, as a journey through resilience and transformation. Could you share a personal moment that deeply shaped its narrative?
Yeah, I think, I had given a talk at a women's event on resilience, and it really started from my youth early on. I was raised by my Sicilian grandparents primarily in the US, and they really helped give me purpose and empowered me to become whoever I wanted. And
Mm,
my grandmother passed right before I graduated university, and within a year after that, one of my best friends died in a tragic accident.
mm,
So I think
mm.
right as this career is blossoming that I indicated at the start of the podcast,
Yeah.
I was having some deep personal suffering that I was enduring. So
Mm,
that kind of really started my whole journey of how I made decisions in my life, and
mm,
and it impacted all the choices that I make.
mm, mm. And you've
Hence
lived
the
at, sorry, go
book.
ahead.
I said, and then it contributed to writing the book to answer your
Absolutely,
question.
absolutely. You know, I'm an author of 10 books, and one of the things that we always look at as an author is sharing our own life experiences, which you seem
Yeah,
to have done in your book. I must get a copy of that. Uh,
absolutely.
Tamara, you've lived as a corporate executive, entrepreneur, single mother, and a global traveler. How do these different identities show up in your poetry?
I think, they're inseparable. I think, it's all part of the whole human that I am. And the book is a narrative in that form. It's one of the reasons I chose poetry. It was really difficult to write my memoir in a linear form, because I feel I have stories on all those phases and forms of my life. In addition to, I think poetry is making a big comeback. It's the way we consume media now, reading in short snippets. It can be by your bed.
Yeah.
So yeah, all of those components of me is what inspired the book.
Amazing. And what role has writing played in your own healing and self-discovery?
A gigantic role. I journaled since I was a young child.
Hmm.
In my travels all over the world, professionally, it was the way I would process. And I think what I had discovered over the years is often journaling would help heal and would
Hmm.
eliminate things that you would think about over and over. And the things that remained with me is what I understood I needed to turn into poetry. And then that was the next phase that helped me understand that side of myself or deal with those more complicated topics that I was
Mm,
struggling.
amazing. And I mean, I've never been able to write poetry because poetry can be very, very personal.
Yes.
Was there any hesitation in you when you were sharing such vulnerable experiences publicly?
Yes. Yes, very much so. And more recently, when I was in Italy, I did my first reading of my poems publicly because it
Hmm.
is something that I keep so private. And I was quite transparent about that with the group. And honestly, it was one of those big life moments that it
Hmm.
was so well received. It was a very diverse group of individuals, and a lot of the topics seemed to be universal and resonate with people. And we had a really nice fire chat for about an hour after I read three poems.
Hmm.
So I feel really happy about it. That it's humanity. They helped me get over that
Correct. Correct.
vulnerability.
Well, it takes courage to become vulnerable in public. And thank you for doing that. Can you
Thank you.
share a theme or a poem from your collection that you feel captures the essence of your book?
Yeah, I think so. There's a poem towards the end of the book called The Turning that it really represents a lot about coming out of the pandemic and how community is so important and healing for all of us. And I sum up that poem a lot thinking it's really going towards the light,
Hmm.
even if you're not ready. So not being afraid to be courageous and take that step and do it with a form of grace when you're not exactly certain what the outcome will be.
Hmm.
And that tends to be a theme throughout the book.
Hmm. And how do you hope readers, especially women, will connect with your reflection of love, loss, and resilience? And give me an example if you can.
Sure. I mean, I would say just a feeling of not being alone.
Mhm.
I think grief is a really important topic that we need to universally speak of more. It's in some cultures, it's considered a bit taboo here in the
Mm.
U.S. And so I really think it's something we all have in common that people can speak of it.
Mm.
At this particular reading in Italy that I referenced, one of the women actually asked me to sign the book above a poem called Whispering Goodbye, which is
Mm.
about when I held my grandmother's hand through death. And that's where she wanted me to sign because that resonated so much with her. And she had tears
Mm.
in her eyes about a loss that she had just
Mm.
experienced.
Amazing. Tomorrow, let's
Mhm.
not talk about your work, which is the Hill
Sure.
House Group. Tell me a little bit about the Hill House Group. And you blend European aesthetics with soulful storytelling. What does this look like in practice?
Yes, I mean, I would say, I have properties in California and Italy for now. There's an expansion going on in Europe, and a lot of that is based on my roots and just kind of my personal aesthetic. I
Mm.
really do blend a lot of the California lifestyle with the European lifestyle. So the first, and I've been an art collector, or I would say just a collector amongst my travels.
Hmm.
So the first property started in Palm Springs, and I collaborated with a great artist, Alex Proba, to do a mural in the pool, um, which really drew people in. And I've taken that also to Italy, to where the first property had a sculpture garden and a yoga experience. So
Hmm.
I try to create these immersive environments that make people really feel at home and like
Hmm.
they're learning something new.
Hmm. And you just spoke about crafting immersive environments. What does immersion mean in the context of interior and property design?
I think, it's been really funny that it's curious the things that we learn about ourselves as we get older, these patterns that you see in behavior. So, from volunteering in other parts of the world, when I was younger, to my professional career and digital experience, and now designing properties, I just think it's the blend of any kind of experience. So, when it
Hmm.
comes to properties, it's about creating the outdoors, indoors, and vice versa, and really creating a flow within a home
Hmm.
where families in particular can feel so relaxed and open that
Wow.
maybe they have conversations they wouldn't have in their own home, and it can
Hmm.
create this level of comfort and bonding with
Hmm.
people.
Thank you. How do you balance functionality and aesthetic excellence when designing for clients? And if you have an interesting client story, do share it.
Sure. I think it comes up with every client really, of that dynamic of maybe one partner wants something brand new and another partner is really attached to these personal belongings. And
Hmm.
so I go through exercises with the clients of what are the must keeps, what are those real sentimental things to hold on to,
Hmm.
and kind of interview them of how they use their property. Some clients actually ask me to stay in their property for a weekend before
Hmm.
I do any of the design for them,
Yeah.
so we can really flow. So I think it also creates a level of sustainability. I'm a firm believer you need to update things for the comfort of luxury and people having that benefit.
Hmm.
Um, but that there's a way to use products that people have had for years.
Hmm. Well said. You speak
Mm.
about blending personal vision with community integration.
Mm.
How do you help clients feel at home in a new cultural context?
Yeah, I'm a firm believer of really trying to integrate the community of wherever you're living into
Hmm.
your environment. So, the region that I work in Italy is Puglia in the south. It's quite an artistic region. Well, obviously all of Italy is, but
Hmm.
so there's been things like I develop olive oil on the land there and have created pop-up artist immersions for them to showcase their work that drives people to the property, and even creating weddings. So
Hmm.
I think, particularly in a foreign country, it's also been a way for me to build community and to build trust in those environments. So not only are the guests happy to come stay, but I feel like I'm giving back to the community for people
Hmm.
that get to showcase their work on the property as well.
Hmm. You just mentioned that you also help curate or create weddings. There's a
Yeah.
big market for weddings in the wealthy in India. Tell me a little bit more about what goes into creating and curating a wedding.
Yeah, and it came from, I wasn't even thinking about this at all. It came from guests asking if I would host weddings or how many people could be in the environment. So I find it's a very, very individual need that you're trying to meet
Hmm.
specifically with that couple. And I think, like my career, it's a lot about coordination and collaboration and making the experience as special as it can be. So my kids would say it's kind of my superpower. So it's a little
Hmm.
more difficult for me to articulate. It's just one of those things that is intuitively very natural, to me. So I'll take on any new opportunity when
Interesting. Yeah.
guests are curious about it.
Fascinating. Fascinating. Tomorrow, I have time for two more questions for you.
Okay, sure.
Sustainability and authenticity are big conversations in design today. How do you
Sure.
bring these principles into your work?
Sure. I mean, I think, Particularly, it's quite interesting. Like I noticed Palm Springs and Puglia are very similar in terms of the nature and the surroundings. In
Mhm.
Puglia, we have the sea and we have more particularly than Palm Spring does, but we have these prickly pear plants. They both have olive trees. There's aesthetically a lot that is aligned. And I think in the case in this region of Puglia, we have some struggles with the trees that are fighting certain diseases. So I've been able, for example, to use the trunk of a dying olive tree and then hire artisans there to make beautiful tabletops,
Mm,
to make beautiful chandeliers, to really utilize all the materials. You'll notice some of the homes are just a very simple natural
mm,
stone.
mm,
So, but what I'm known for in this particular region is taking it a little bit to the next level and integrating art and integrating people's personal artifacts that
mm.
make the homes less just looking one way and more eclectic and more personable.
Amazing. And my last question for you, as someone
Sure.
who has created environments that spark unforgettable moments, what is the ultimate experience you want a guest to have?
Oh, that's really good. I want them to feel welcomed,
Mhm.
to feel like they might have learned something
Mhm.
about the area and how to experience beauty in a home, that it creates a level of relaxation,
Mhm.
that maybe they're solving problems that they've been struggling with before they arrived, and that it ultimately creates closeness and community with whomever they're traveling. And I
Mhm.
get really great feedback from guests that they feel this way, and some even inspired to want to buy properties in the region or to hire me to help them, with their homes to create that feeling. So it's a joy.
Fascinating. So I've got to ask you one last question. You speak of vulnerability in your book, The Threads
Yeah.
of Becoming, Vulnerability and Resilience. Does this come through in your designs as well?
Wow, that is such a good question. No one's ever asked me that. I would say yes, because I would say I take risks with some of it.
Hmm.
There's things that feel really natural to me. The pool in Palm Springs is a great
Yeah.
example.
Yeah.
I was trying to talk neighbors into doing something like this who are big art collectors. And I got home one evening and said, wait a minute, I think that I need to do this.
Hmm.
Um, and I didn't know how it would be received, and it could have come out terrible. And I think that's an example of being vulnerable
Hmm.
and taking a chance. And I think candidly, whenever we welcome anyone into our homes, that is a level of vulnerability
Absolutely.
because you are sharing a big part
Correct.
of yourself. And
Correct.
when I get invited anywhere, I personally feel a lot of gratitude because I take that very seriously. So
Absolutely. But on that note, Tamara, I just want to say what a fabulous conversation this has been with you.
thank you.
Thank you for speaking to me about your book, The Threads of Becoming. I'm going to ask all our viewers and listeners to go and check out Tamara Hill's book. Thank you also for speaking to me about the amazing work you're doing in luxury properties, both in California and Italy. Thank you
Thank
again
you
for
so
speaking to
much.
me, and good luck to you.
Thank you. I really enjoyed our time.
Thank you. Thank you for listening to the Brand Called You videocast and podcast, a platform that brings you knowledge, experience, and wisdom of hundreds of successful individuals from around the world. Do visit our website www.tbcy.in to watch and listen to the stories of many more individuals. You can also follow us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Just search for the brand called You.